This year marks the 75th anniversary of one of the most iconic comic book characters ever. 75 years of the insanity that is the Joker. But this isn't just a origin story. This is more than that. This goes back to his creation, his creators, who made this character. To do that, we have to go back to the 1940s. It's not just history. There's a little bit of opinion that's going to be thrown in there. It's going to be a little bit of backstory. Everything you'd want to know about where this character came from. The Joker himself was created in 1940. Now, here is the part that's interesting. His creation is just as insane as the character himself. Now, popular opinion about Bob Kane is two-sided. Bob Kane was known as the creator of Batman, also known as the creator of the Joker. But a lot of people don't realize was that there was other people that were working with Bob Kane. Bob Kane himself, in much later years, only fessed up to some of the facts and didn't really give the whole story of everything that happened. The Joker was created by Bob Kane, but he was also created by Bill Finger and Jerry Robinson. This is a point that's been contested over the years by Bob Kane himself. The question always was, because Bob Kane claimed that he also created Batman by himself, and that was later debunked, what happened with the Joker? Well, we've got three different sides of a story. Bill Finger claims that he was really in love with a movie from the 1920s, a movie called The Man Who Laughs. Came out in 1928. It was a silent era film. The lead actor in the movie was Conrad Veidt. Conrad Veidt had this amazing talent for being able to morph his face. He could do things that he wanted to without any prosthetics. What happened was pretty creepy to say the least, but Bill Finger was really into this movie, and when Bob Kane and Bill Finger were discussing how to create this new character, they came up with what Conrad Veidt looked like in the 1928 movie. Now, this is disputed by Jerry Robinson, you see. The thing here is Jerry Robinson said that he was also involved in the creation of the Joker. His idea was to use a playing card from a regular deck of cards, the Joker's playing card. Now, he said in one of his stories that he had created the Joker with Bob Kane using this card. But it was disputed by Bob Kane because Bob Kane said that Bill Finger came up with the idea from Conrad Veidt in the movie The Man Who Laughs. So, it's always been an interesting and crazy story, and you have a couple of different stories that go back to this time. But there is no doubt that we can all agree that the Joker was created in 1940. He was premiered in Batman #1. He was going to be a throwaway character, though, and that's the interesting point of it. He was just going to be another character that the Batman killed. Yes, I said it, that the Batman killed. Another thing that people don't seem to realize is the original Batman, and you can find it in the comic books if you can find it on the net, Batman carried a gun, and he actually did kill a couple of criminals. He fought a lot of mob bosses and street thugs. But when the Joker came along, it was a completely different story. There was a different dynamic. The Joker was going to be killed off, but somebody stepped in and intervened and said, no, let the character live. And from that one moment in time, when somebody said, let that character live, we ended up with 75 years of amazing insanity. So now we have the Joker's look, we have the disputed stories, but still the stories that came out of the 1940s from Bob Kane, Bill Finger, and Jerry Robinson. Now, the Joker's had a sordid history in the comic books, probably easily the most dangerous villain that Batman's ever faced. He's done more damage to the Batman than any other character in the comic book series, or in the DC universe for that fact. He was responsible for the death of Batman's second Robin, Jason Todd. In Death in the Family, a very dark look at the comic book itself, Jason Todd was murdered by the Joker. He was beaten to death with a crowbar, and then later blown up. Now, this is also an interesting thing because DC Comics decided that they wanted to have a little contest to see if the Todd character would live or die. They put out the vote. You could either vote yes or no that Jason Todd would be killed. Nobody's really sure 100% if it was a unanimous decision by all of the people. It was said that a lot of people could not stand the Jason Todd character. They did not like him as Robin, and they decided that they wanted to get rid of him. But also it's said that DC Comics might have been looking for another one of those paydays where everybody rushes to buy comic books off of something like this. Nevertheless, Jason Todd character, the second Robin, was murdered by the Joker. The next interesting part is Barbara Gordon. Barbara Gordon, as a lot of you may know, used to be the Batgirl. But in The Killing Joke, the Joker came in and shot her through the spine, thus paralyzing her. Now, it didn't kill her, so she was no longer the Batgirl, and she just decided to take up another mantle in her career as Oracle, the ever-vigilant lookover for Batman's shoulder. She's always there, hacking into computers and helping the Batman, but in The Killing Joke, a very, very dark story, the Joker did almost kill her. In 1954, the comic book code came about, and this was partially due to the violence in comic books and people trying to get rid of comic books at the time. The Joker was tapered down tremendously. He wasn't the dark, dirty, scary figure that he used to be. As a matter of fact, through the 70s and a lot of the 80s, he was almost a punchline. He was truly a pop culture reference, but he was more of a jokester than a diabolical murderer. More recently, the Joker has gone a lot darker and more extreme by cutting off his own face in the storyline Death of the Family. It's also revealed in Death of the Family the Joker is in love with Batman. Now, there's a couple different ways you can look at this. Love being brotherly or love being sexually. The Joker's always been a twisted, tormented character, so you pretty much have to leave it up to that. However you look at it. But he does profess his love to the Batman, saying that they're basically the yin-yang and one and the same. One just took a different turn than the other, but they are, in fact, in the Joker's mind, the same person. Strangely, the way they chose to tell his origin story was a man with a red bullet-shaped dome on his head. But even that story in itself has changed so many times over the years, it's kind of hard to put your finger on what they were intending and what it actually ended up being. So this is the story of Red Hood. Red Hood was either a gangster or a family man, depending on which stories you read. The original Red Hood's premise was that there was a gang leader, thief named Red Hood. He wore a red hood, and so did his gang. He fell into a vat of chemicals being chased by either the police or Batman. So it's just dependent on what history you actually read of this character. But that history was actually changed even more with the story The Killing Joke. Now, depending on what part of the story you choose to go with, the Red Hood's either a devoted family man who's a failed comedian, or he's just a common everyday thug. Now, in the book The Killing Joke, it explains that the Joker, aka Red Hood, was known as Jack. Jack was an engineer, very unhappy with his life, and he hated his job, so he quit to become a stand-up comedian. He was terrible at stand-up comedy. Nobody got the joke. So as failed with all of his jobs and having a pregnant wife at home, he did the only thing he could. He ended up in a life of crime. As the Red Hood, working for a gang, He was chased down by either the police or the Batman, depending on which story you're reading, and he fell into a vat of chemicals. Either way, it always ends the same way. Jack is being chased and falls into a vat of chemicals as the Red Hood. So it just depends on what you want to take away from this. I personally like the story of Jack the engineer, who is a failed comedian, falls on hard times with a pregnant wife, joins a gang to make some extra money, and falls into a vat of chemicals, either by the police or by Batman. It's completely up to you, though. They're interchangeable. He's so much more a richer character over the last 75 years to be brought into this strange new light that they keep throwing him into. And who knows, in the future maybe he'll have another origin story or another origin story.